Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Danielle Slakoff and I am an assistant professor of criminal justice at Sacramento State. Thank you so much for having me today. So recently my colleagues and I wrote a piece about COVID-19 and intimate partner violence, and I am here to share some key findings and highlights. So as a starting point, I'd like to briefly state that it's important to understand that intimate partner violence should be viewed through an intersectional lens. In other words, it's important to understand that different people experience intimate partner violence differently and that no two abusive relationships are the same. It's also important when you're trying to help someone to understand that everybody has their own unique needs and their own unique circumstances. So for example, not everyone will have access to some of the technology that I discussed today. So I want to briefly discuss a key concept in this work. Many people view intimate partner violence as physical abuse, and that certainly can be part of it. But intimate partner violence actually looks a lot like coercive control. So Evan Stark defined coercive control as the perpetrator's abusive pattern of behavior, including violence, intimidation, threats, isolation, and controlling tactics. Coercion and control can look like surveillance, stalking, and micro-regulating somebody's everyday behaviors. We also know that abusive tactics have changed during this time. Many victims have said during this pandemic, their abusers have started monitoring all communications with friends and family, have started withholding information about the virus, as well as restricting their access to important hygiene products such as masks, gloves, and hand soap. And we know that stay-at-home orders can isolate people from their support networks and their jobs and can give their abusers unlimited access to them. We also know that when somebody is going to talk to a supporter about intimate partner violence, that they generally go to friends and family first. And of course, the pandemic has absolutely shifted our access to our friends and family. If someone does go to receive formal services, let's say from an advocate, they will often formulate a safety plan together. So standard aspects of a safety plan include who they should contact if the abuse escalates, where they would be safest within their house, and will often instruct them to put personal items together in a hidden location in case they need to swiftly exit. So technology may help, of course, some victims maintain that access to their informal and formal support networks, but it's important to understand that most intimate partner violence survivors actually say that they've experienced technological surveillance, such as having spyware installed on their devices. So given the fact that so much of our communication has moved to phone and internet-based services during the pandemic, it's so important to create safe online spaces for intimate partner violence victims. So I just mentioned safety plans 1 second ago, and one of the suggestions that we have in this piece is to add tech-based safety to that plan. For example, a service provider in Canada says that victims should be encouraged to set up code words to use on the phone. For example, "we are out of milk," to let their friends or family know that they're in trouble. Or let's say that the victim is video chatting, it could be good to set up a code signal, a silent signal, to let their family or friend know that they need help. So I have some very limited time to discuss some of these tech-based recommendations, but I want to briefly go over two of the most important tools. First, most web browsers have this thing called incognito mode, so Chrome and Firefox. And we know that when somebody is surfing the web in incognito mode, there is no search history saved. This is important because many abusers track their victims' search history. So if you know someone who might need resources or need to read up on intimate partner violence, please encourage them to use incognito mode. I also wanted to draw your attention to quick escape buttons. So many intimate partner violence service providers have quick escape buttons on their websites. They are basically these large buttons in the usually top right of the web page that a person can quickly click to close the page. And the reason this is important is because if a victim closes their laptop or turns off the screen really fast, that can potentially tip off their abuser. So this is viewed as being a better way of getting out of the web page quickly. And then finally, I just want to briefly talk about what the media gets wrong and right about intimate partner violence. First, when describing intimate partner violence during the pandemic, the media should not mistakenly imply that COVID-19 is causing abuse. To be clear, COVID-19 is absolutely exacerbating intimate partner violence. And we know that things such as housing scarcity and unemployment can have impacts on intimate partner violence. But it's important to understand that if abuse is happening during the pandemic, it's very likely that other abusive tactics were already being used before the pandemic even began. And I think that's just important to point out. In terms of what the media gets right, well, research has shown that media accounts who include advocate and service provider voices tend to have a very accurate reflection of intimate partner violence, or a much more accurate depiction. So if you're ever in the have the opportunity to actually shape a media narrative about intimate partner violence, absolutely suggest to that media personnel to speak to somebody who works in intimate partner violence service provider or an advocate, because they will definitely get a well-rounded explanation of intimate partner violence. Also, media narratives absolutely can shape public sentiment and sometimes even public policy. So if you have the opportunity to be part of a story about this topic, absolutely do it. The more awareness we have about intimate partner violence, the better. Thank you so much for having me. I hope that the last 6.5 minutes were informational, and I'm so happy to take questions.